episode of the yayQuery podcast, brought to you by TinyCDN and Devotee.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us for episode 2 of yayQuery. We're happy you're here. We'd like to recognize this awesome brand new theme song we have. It's from Jonathan Neal, whose work you may have heard earlier on our podcast. He's the author of the jQuery Swift Object plugin. And you might hear a little bit more from him later. We also would like to thank our sponsors, TinyCDN and Devotee.
Yay!
Thank you. And we also want to recognize the brand new yayQuery.org website, where you can certainly see all of our past episodes, get the links that we talk about, and I also want to point out that we have an RSS feed, we have proper podcast feeds, both audio and video, and iTunes feeds. So
we have everything.
We got it. We got it if you want it.
Hopefully it will be on .com soon.
We're going to move to .com.
Check to make sure that you're not redirected to .com, because our transaction hopefully will go through before then.
Certainly.
But,
just check your local listings.
Yes.
You'll see it soon.
Yes.
So, Rebecca.
So Paul and everybody, so we are the yayQuery podcast, of course, but I think there was this other little jQuery podcast that came out this week, maybe like with John Ressig and
I think it's a lot bigger than little.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about it.
That was me being sarcastic. It was huge. It was the second most popular tech podcast on iTunes.
In iTunes.
Or something
Ever.
like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was fun. And we heard John Ressig talking about all sorts of jQuery news, and Ralph Whitbeck was on there doing the interviewing, and Elijah Manor. And
great.
Good stuff.
Indeed.
Definitely fun to hear a little bit more about the progress that's going on with 1.4 and hearing about how people can contribute. And I think one of our yayQuery cast members might have had a little appearance on the podcast. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I had a short little question, and I asked John how community members can help drive us towards the release of 1.4 and what we can actually do to get the release out the door. But listen to the jQuery podcast for what John said about that.
For all sorts of updates, especially if you haven't been able to go to like the conferences and stuff. Lots of stuff in there that you'll want to hear.
Yeah,
totally.
And we definitely want to thank Ralph and the podcast. They gave a really nice shout out to us, to the yayQuery podcast. So we certainly appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Definitely, yes.
So speaking of recent news, this last weekend, I was lucky enough to join John Ressig, Richard Worth, Carl Swedberg, and Boaz Sender, and we worked on the brand new documentation site. And it's not out yet, but there's a few things that we're doing. We are moving it to a brand new platform. The documentation site is currently on MediaWiki, and we're moving it to WordPress. There's a few goodies that come along with that, but one of the more notable is there will be public commenting available on all pieces of documentation. And the other big thing is that Carl... Yeah, sorry.
What kind of public interaction will we have on that commenting specifically?
Yelling!
So it'll probably... We'll probably see something like Discus, or Discuss, however you pronounce it.
Discus.
Sure, Discus. And we'll be seeing something like that. We might evaluate a few other commenting features, but we want to have kind of the public feedback of something like PHP.net.
Right.
And allow the community to kind of comment that either something needs clarification or provide more detail around something. So we're hoping to really augment what's there with feedback.
That's great.
Does that mean that certain things, like everyone being able to edit the docs, are going away?
The number of people that can edit the docs is being reduced, certainly. It will not be publicly editable as it is now. However, not many people will actually know that. But the permission to edit will be given if you ask, but it won't be something that's just completely available for you to do on the fly.
But on the flip side, people will still be able to just add their comments to the bottom, and if they're worthy, then they'll be there.
Right.
Certainly.
Was there a problem before with spam, or is this just kind of generally a good?
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with spam as it stands right now. There's a few pages that people just consistently vandalize with adding links to their sites and SEO manipulation and things like that. So, so that's one problem that this is certainly solving.
Great.
And the other big thing, which is Carl Swedberg's jQuery reference guide, a book out by Pact Publishing. We're integrating basically all of the content of that entire guide into the documentation itself. So that's really fleshing out much of the documentation. There's going to be a lot more examples, a lot more details of each method. Really great stuff. Carl Swedberg's site is learningjquery.com. He's published Learning jQuery 1.3 and then the jQuery reference guide as well. Really excellent stuff, and I'm excited about the documentation site as it's coming.
Plus, he's a pretty funny dude whenever he talks. I like listening to him.
So, Paul, was there any more word about what we're going to see and when we're going to see it in 1.4 while you were up there?
About 1.4, there's a lot of things that still need to land in 1.4. I didn't hear any word as far as when we're going to be seeing it. John's official word was it will be released when the bugs are fixed and the patches are landed.
When it's done?
Right, when it's done. You know, I'm expecting somewhere around January. I don't think we'll be seeing it in November, December. But we really don't know at this point. Yeah.
Is there anything like sneaking in under the wire there?
There might be.
One thing I recall from JQ Con is that they like to give the new versions of jQuery almost as like a Christmas present to the developer community, relying on people's spare time in that vacation week to think, you know what I want to do right now? Throw in a new version of the core JavaScript library. I got some spare time.
The other thing I really want to share out of the weekend was if you ever get the chance to play video games against John Resig,
what?
I would suggest you don't. We ended up playing Super Mario Brothers Wii, which was just released this last weekend, and John is very good at Super Mario Brothers, and he. In a collaborative game, we were moving through, and he had the tendency to just fly through, and everyone would die trying to follow and catch up to him. It was real, and we were, John, stop it! But he
didn't like throw his Wii wand at you or anything,
it wasn't,
did he?
No violence.
No,
I almost threw it at him, believe me. But that would not be in the interest of the jQuery project. So.
All right. All right, well, John's going to have something bad to say about you on their podcast now. Watch out.
So I know that you must have spent the weekend involved with your head in the jQuery source, and we were thinking of doing a new segment this week called Hidden Enhancements.
Hidden Enhancements!
Hidden Enhancements!
They're hidden enhancements.
What?
They're little tiny things you never thought you'd see.
Oh.
Hidden enhancements are little enhancements from jQuery that are hidden and people don't know too much about. This week we're going to focus on nifty things you can do with an equals sign. Paul, why don't you tell us more?
Ooh.
Certainly. There are two selectors that have not been documented in the docs so far, and I'm going to bring those up first. They are attribute contains word and attribute contains prefix. Attribute contains word is basically you use square brackets, attribute name, tilde equals value. Basically what that does is it looks to see if that value is in the value of the attribute, but it's delimited by spaces, basically. So like, let's say you have an A tag with a rel attribute, and the value of that is remote space bookmark. If you do tilde equals bookmark, it'll match. So that's one of them. The attribute contains prefix is square brackets, attribute name, pipe equals, and then a value. So this was designed, this is from the CSS spec, and it's basically designed for handling language attributes. So one common one would be lang pipe equals en, and that would match when lang equals en, lang equals en dot us, lang equals en dot ca, basically anything.
So Paul, with the word one, does it require? It does require that there be a word boundary around this word, so it doesn't just match generally. It just matches for that word itself.
Correct. Yeah, it's basically looking for the word bounded by spaces.
Okay.
Essentially.
Okay.
And the other hidden enhancement that we actually got a chance to document, so this will be in the new documentation, is jQuery.fx.off. So this is a property, and it's just a Boolean, and its default is false. But if you set jQuery.fx.off to true, all animations that are currently active will just immediately go to their final state, and any subsequent animations will not animate. They will just go to the destination of where they're supposed to be going. And you can just set jQuery.fx.off back to false whenever you want, and the animations will animate.
Right. What would be a good use case for turning the FX off?
One of them would be if you detect that the client is like a low resource device, perhaps a mobile phone.
Right.
Perhaps if there's accessibility issues and you just want a very straightforward experience, perhaps you say that IE6 isn't going to get any classy stuff going on. You just set jQuery.fx.off equals to true, and IE6 gets just what it deserves.
Straight, yeah. That's actually kind of a cool progressive enhancement if your animations are a little odd in some of the older browsers.
Yeah.
You know, you get the right end result, but not necessarily the in-between. That's kind of cool, especially for mobile browsers, which are kind of terrible at that fast polling.
Yeah, the animation gets really
absolutely.
Yeah.
AJ, I think you have probably the most important news inside of jQuery this week.
This is true.
Really?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was that you got a haircut?
Yes!
Oh my gosh. Yes.
AJ Piano got a haircut. If you have noticed the beautifuln's of AJ Piano today.
That is nice.
I'm trying to bring in the lighting.
I think we'll pull up the picture right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
What is that? So what is that, Adam?
This is AJ.
It's an over-the-head blow dryer, I guess, and that helps the hair dry after you get it cut after a nice head massage. The best part of a haircut is easily the head massage. I don't know if you guys get that, but if you don't get that, or if you're, a developer out there who doesn't get it,
the head massage is key.
Get the head massage.
The key.
Get that.
So I didn't know that I could get a head massage. Can I get a head massage?
My curliness aside, I wanted to move back into something a little bit more serious. Jason, or however you choose to pronounce it.
Definitely not Jason.
Jason.
I pronounce Jason.
Jason.
This is everyone's favorite discussion. But let's move on to something more substantive, which is how should you be parsing JSON if you're a jQuery developer? I like to tell people you should be using Douglas Crockford's JSON2.js, which is available at crockford.org, And also John Resig personally blogged that exact phrase, you should be using json2.js. That said, however, there are, of course, a couple jQuery implementations that basically wrap around parsing and evaling JSON. The core thing, though, that you get when you use Douglas Crockford's plugin is the fallback to the native JSON object if it exists, which is always going to be faster and is a better way of working with things. But I wanted to ask you guys about some of the jQuery plugins that are out there that handle this and talk about whether we even think such a thing is necessary.
There is the jQuery-JSON plugin. It previously, up until pretty recently, hadn't supported the most recent JSON.stringify that some of the modern browsers had supported. But we did get a patch in there that does support that, and so it is fairly safe to use jQuery-JSON. If you search for that, I think it's the second result, not the first. It is pretty safe to use that if you need it in the jQuery namespace. It also does a few other things like safe eval, which isn't much different unless it doesn't support the native function. It always does a native function if you have it, and if not, it'll strip out functions and things like that if you don't have it.
And I want to point out one quick thing about the native JSON. So this is in json2.js, jQuery JSON. We have native JSON in Firefox 3.5 and IE8 right now. And is it? It must be in WebKit.
I think in the most recent WebKit release it is.
So we have it there, and it's going to be in jQuery 1.4. This might catch you kind of like unguarded, because one of the things about the native JSON is that it requires a very specific format of the JSON that you pass into it.
The actual JSON format that is required by Douglas Crockford.
It's documented on json.org. Actually, the URL that Adam gave before, it's not crockford.org, but jason.org, is one of the big things is that any key name needs double quotes around it, and you're probably not used to that. If you eval stuff, evaling doesn't require double quotes, but json.parse requires double quotes. So definitely be aware of that. But it's interesting, like with jQuery JSON, they've basically taken a lot of this functionality and just turned it into a jQuery plugin. Adam, I don't know, like you kind of have this attitude about when you take native JavaScript stuff and then just pluginify it.
Exactly. I tend to rail against this practice of sticking things into the jQuery namespace just because it is a namespace that's not quite global. One great place to put things that are not quite global is into your own application-specific namespace. I know I do this, I know a lot of people I know do this, but I don't know if everyone does it. If you're glomming up the global namespace with a lot of functions and stuff, as I get my headphones back in here, it can tend to get really messy. You never know if you bring in some library whether a name conflict could exist. But furthermore, it's a matter of principle. You're making your application. Your application isn't a jQuery plugin, and jQuery is really providing a lower level of access than your application is. If you have widgets or if you have certain, ways of talking to the server that you tend to leverage, they don't necessarily belong in the jQuery namespace. And I don't really see how jQuery to JSON or whatever is any more necessary than just providing some wrapper library for the browser object if it exists. But the larger point is try to use a global namespace, please.
Right, and I think one thing is that a lot of plugin developers do like to develop something and release it as a jQuery plugin. A lot of developers Google for things as jQuery plugins when they don't even need to be jQuery specific. but in many, many cases, a lot of functionality regarding strings, dates, JSON, cookies, have really nothing to do with jQuery at all, and really can exist as just completely native JavaScript itself.
Right. I think we'll move on. I think the next segment we'll talk about, Rebecca, you really feel pretty strongly about, which is front-end performance, which I also care deeply about front-end performance at my job. One of my biggest things is front-end performance. Steve Souders would be proud of us. I think we're going to do a little bit on front-end. Well, I think I have my book. Well, I don't have front EFS stuff.
No.
It looks the same though.
I'm just going to hold up this JavaScript MVC ball again.
Naturally. So I think what we're going to talk about first this week is combination and minification of JavaScript scripts. What do you?
And one of the things, I mean, I already wanted to talk about this week, and then just today I was reading through my Twitter stream and saw somebody post an article, and we'll include it on the website for this episode. But there was an article today about Google might start actually looking at page performance to determine rank, and this is going to be kind of a rude awakening to some people, people who haven't been combining and minifying their scripts, because it really, if you have, jQuery and 5 plugins and then your script and maybe your other script and your other script, now you've got 10 scripts, and each of those is taking a shocking amount of time to download. You can be looking at 200 milliseconds or more per script, and that adds up. I was doing development today on a website that I was in development mode, so I was actually downloading 30 JavaScript files, and oh my god, 12 seconds for that page to load. It sucked. And you flip on the minification combination, and it's down to like a 4-second page load. Huge difference. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this, because I think that, I'll be honest, for me this was sort of a scary thing a few months ago. I didn't really understand how you did it, and it seemed complicated. And then I saw that it's actually just download yui compressor and write 2 lines of shell script that are really easy, and you've got yourself a minified and combined set of JavaScript, or a minified and combined set of CSS. So that's sort of the poor man's way of doing combination and minification, is just to combine all your files into a single file and then run yui compressor on that combined file. It's not going to help you if you have dependency management and that sort of stuff, but if you really just have a bunch of JavaScript that you need to get into one file and then get it minified, it's a really easy way to do it. So, and Alex, you've had some experience with actually using more advanced and fancier techniques, so maybe you can talk about those.
Right. I think fancier is a little bit of a silly word, almost, because it's always easy to just combine your files together. I mean, I know you're just being nice, but like I work somewhat with the Kohana PHP framework. And very quickly, I think in about a half day, I wrote a plugin to, put my dependencies for, as far as JavaScript goes, into my controllers. And if I needed certain groups of files, I would put them into groups of, the parent controller of this part of my web page. And automatically inside of my page, I would have a not only a minified and compressed and combined version of my JavaScript, I would also have a versioned copy of my JavaScript that wouldn't cache the next time it was loaded.
Right.
Just about everything about combining your JavaScript that you need, and then minifying it works out to your benefit if you can do it in your stack of development. Because
yeah, and I think that can be the hard thing for people, is to actually, a lot of people are used to, download the file to their local machine, make an edit, and push it back up with FTP, and done, and that is the release process. But I think that If you have a slightly more complex release process where you actually do take this minifying and combination step before you push your code live, it just makes a huge difference in the performance of your page. And you can do this with JavaScript, you can do it with CSS, you can do it with all sorts of files. But it makes just a big difference, and I don't see enough people doing it, and now Google's going to start caring. So that's what I wanted to say about that.
Partly owing to like a lot of the continuing weight of hearing all this, I started trying to get this in myself this weekend. I stumbled across a pretty interesting project. I'll mention Cold Fusion again because here I am, the Cold Fusion guy. But I found a nifty thing called CF Combine that does this on the fly. I was trying to implement yUI compressor for JS because right now that does JSmin for JS. I stepped into the yUI IRC channel today on Freenode, and they were really nice and helpful about things. They're just trying to go ahead and document the Java documentation for the yUI compressor, which is still a really awesome compressor. Closure's out, it has a lot of buzz, but I think we talked about it wasn't offering huge compression differences yet. It was it makes me feel like my code's been tampered with, whereas yUI, I know that it's smaller, it's safer, but it's pretty much what I wrote.
Right.
So, and also, like I said, cross that bridge. I think that as you hear more about something like combination minification or any technology that you hear, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. The more you hear it, maybe it's time to listen.
I think the bottom line is it's not as complicated as it might sound to you. So I'll try and put up a little pastebin, a little pasty that shows what a simple build script looks like. Because once you see it, you'll say, "Duh, I should do that on everything."
I think we've talked enough on combination. I think it's clear that all of us agree that we should do that. You should always combine your scripts because HTTP requests are slow. Souders would kill you if you had more than half of an HTTP request. So we'll move on, speaking of performance, to Paul Irish's jQuery anti-pattern for performance of the week.
Paul Irish's jQuery
anti-pattern for performance of the week.
Bum, bum.
All right, so this week's anti-pattern is don't unbind event handlers if you need to temporarily disable them. I've seen this before. People will do this. They'll rebind the event handlers afterwards when they need to re-enable the functionality. It's extremely expensive to do this again and again. A much more sane approach to this would be to just have a flag. Check a flag inside of the event handler. So inside the event handler, you basically check to see should be disabled equals true, and then just investigate from inside the event handler whether or not the rest of it should complete. If it should not complete, just return right at the top of the handler, and if not, just go ahead. But unbinding and rebinding, if this is just for enabling and disabling, is an extremely expensive operation, and it can certainly be avoided.
Right. So you define these bind callbacks to a certain event. I found that recently you've been using different names for callbacks.
I'm sorry. You're
I'm
callback?
confused.
Callbacks.
I'm not sure I understand the name callbacks.
Alex.
Yes.
Hollabacks.
Hollabacks. Hollabacks.
Yeah.
They're called hollabacks.
Recently, Paul Irish has redefined the name callback to hollabacks, and I've been so densely immersed in hollabacks that I just didn't recognize the name callbacks.
So Paul, are we going to see this in the new jQuery documentation?
I discussed it. I actually discussed it with the team. I'm hoping to run a search and replace while they're not looking.
Right.
We're going to see some hollabacks.
great.
Definitely.
You see people go down a crazy path with this kind of stuff too. I've seen people, once they go down the let me rebind and unbind my handlers, then they start copying the same functions into the handler when they need to recopy it, as opposed to, it's a dark and dirty place to go.
Right.
And you just don't want to be there. And also, we know that our yayQuery audience, you guys are brilliant. So I'll just share an anecdote that we've often encountered, which is one funny thing is that some people tend to assume that you can just give a callback to any jQuery method. If you're under this misconception, you're wrong, but you can't just pass a function to any jQuery method and assume that function will be executed after. We see that from time to time and chuckle to ourselves.
But never from any of you, of course. So
all the others.
Never. So hey, Paul, I think we're doing another new segment this week. What
new
is
segment?
We're all about the new segments this week. So this is our plugin of the week segment.
It's the plugin of the week, and it's really, really great. It's the plugin of the week. Yeah!
So the plugin is the jQuery Feeds API jQuery plugin. Okay, also known as...
That was a lot of words.
JG
Feed.
JG Feed?
JG Feed.
JG
yes.
Feed. This plugin, it's really pretty cool. So it basically delivers to you the JSON data of any sort of RSS feed or an XML feed.
Does this work like cross-domain and stuff like that?
Yeah, totally. So you basically just send, you grab like a feed URL, you give it to the plugin. It's going to basically call the Google Ajax API for feeds, and it's going to return a JSON object to you, and you can just traverse that JSON object and do whatever you want with it.
Awesome.
It's pretty cool, and one of the things that it uses inside of it is JSON-P. And I don't know if everyone's really encountered JSON-P before, but
what does that stand for?
So it's JSON with padding.
Which is the stupidest name. I'm on an anti-naming kick.
It doesn't really make any sense at all.
No.
It should be like JSON-C or something. JSON with a callback. It's a lot of times, so with any sort of local resource, you can just do an AJAX request and get back a JSON object and just process it. But if it's remote, you can't do a cross-domain AJAX request, right? So what it basically does is it creates a script tag and sets the source of it to be some remote script. Inside that script is essentially the JSON object, but right around it is a function name. So it's going to call like callback as a function name and then pass it this object. But the trick is that you have callback defined back in your JavaScript. So it's going to run whatever you define as the handler for that object.
One thing I want to say about JSON-P, because the jQuery docs used to be sort of unclear about this, is that the server providing the data has to be cooperative. The server providing the data has to actually provide JSON-P, because every now and then we'll see people saying, oh, well, JSON-P says I can do cross-browser stuff. You have to have a cooperative server on the other end that's willing to wrap its result in that callback.
Right.
But wait, this sounds so hard.
It's
dynamic
not
creating
hard.
A script tag? But
no.
But wait, I don't even have an XML feed. I don't have an RSS feed. I just have some stuff on another domain, and I need to get it. How?
Adam,
help me.
We have the solution for you.
Calm down.
So Yahoo Pipes is probably one of the best little toolkits that is hard to dig into, but it can save your life. Yahoo Pipes does some really cool shit. So you can basically give it a URL for any sort of XML resource, and you can transform that into JSON and then retrieve that as JSON-P. And so anytime you call that JSON-P URL, it will basically retrieve that resource on the fly and transform it and then deliver it to you in the format that you want. Extremely powerful. There's a far more lot that it can actually do and filter and manipulate and do regex, search and replace. Extremely powerful and a front-end developer's best friend.
Pretty sweet UI too.
Yeah.
Yes. Does anyone know about yQuery, which is kind of, it's similar in the sense that you can kind of query almost these feeds more directly than just a feed coming in as data.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, I probably don't know if you were there, at JSConf, I saw Tom Hughes-Croucher demo yQuery, and it was just sort of, it was cool. Their tagline is select star from internet. And so I think that, I don't remember the syntax or whatever, but you can basically select elements from the Yahoo homepage using CSS selectors. Just as an example, I mean, that's a tiny example of all the different things you can do with yQuery. It's pretty crazy. There's, again, all sorts of feeds. And it gives you this SQL-like syntax for being able to get crazy things out of this data. So it's a lot of fun to play around with, and they have a cool web-based interface where you can just enter queries and play with the different tables, as they call them.
Yeah, yQuery is really powerful and has a lot of stuff, and it's hard to get into a little bit because it doesn't have this cool drag and droppy UI like Yahoo Pipes, but extremely powerful and provides all the same functionality that Pipes does.
Yeah, it's crazy and fun mashup stuff to do there.
All right. Well, I think that brings us, unfortunately, to the end of this week's yayQuery podcast, episode 2, the third episode. We'd like to thank our sponsors, of course, Devotee.com, which is expression engine collaboration support. It pretty much allows you to express yourself in expression engine, right? Yeah. And then we have Tiny CDN. Thanks so much. If you need a CDN with big power with a tiny name, Tiny CDN.
Yes, and we'd also like to point out an exclusive offer for all the yayQuery podcast listeners. If you live in the Washington, D.C. area, Richard Worth, who is I think he's the project manager of jQuery UI, he's a jQuery team member, is doing a jQuery workshop in the beginning of December. And if you're listening to this, you can get 30% off on entrance. So the discount code is yayQuery, and we'll have a link to it on our site. So thank you very much for listening, and we're going to leave you with another the brand new debuting right now official yayQuery ending theme. Thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you, Jonathan Neal.
yayQuery, we're sorry.